Frank, thank you so much. In a bid to keep COVID case numbers down in the workforce, the City of Toronto is now requiring employers to inform them immediately if they have 2 or more confirmed cases among employees. Public Health is also promising to better inform people of which particular workplaces are experiencing those outbreaks. So what are the possible impacts on employers and employees? And what about the rights of workers if they need time off to be at home, say, with their kids while they learn remotely? There's a lot to discuss here. Joining me now, employment lawyer Stuart Rudner. Good morning to you, Stuart.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Lots of changes, lots of questions, Stuart, so let's get right to it. Sure. Toronto Public Health yesterday announcing the reporting of these possible outbreaks in workplaces. What do you make of this, what they call transparency?
Yeah, well, as you said, lots of change, but in some ways, nothing really new. We're still seeing rising numbers. We're still seeing a lot of concern about outbreaks in the workplace, and my understanding is there's a significant number of workplace outbreaks. So I'm not really surprised, and I don't think there was anything groundbreaking in this announcement. But as you said, there is this push for transparency. So now they're going to be publicizing workplace outbreaks, and there is this expectation that as soon as there's an outbreak, defined as being more than 2 or more people with COVID, employers must report that to Toronto Public Health. So that's what they've said. And they've also said they're going to publicize it, but they're also going to be mindful of employee privacy. So if the workplace is particularly small and it wouldn't be possible to maintain the employee's privacy, there are going to be limits on how much they report.
Do you think that the transparency is not there right now, that perhaps employers are not reporting these instances?
Look, I think most employers are. I think most people are trying to do the right thing and make sure that we can control the spread, which is, of course, what's driving all of this. But of course, there are some who either don't know that they have to report it or are going to kind of close their eyes and hope it goes away. So I think there are some that are not, or at least taking their chances. And this is hopefully a reminder that they have to if there's even a concern that they might have an outbreak.
I want to get your take on virtual learning. It's the delicate and difficult balance between parents who are also employees, or perhaps they are employers, and trying to figure out your rights because everyone is trying to juggle right now. So are there specific rights that, let's say, employees have? They need to stay home, be with their kids, and help them with remote learning. Let's say they can't complete this task or they can't jump on these conference calls. So as an employee, they're not ideal right now. Do they have these rights?
Yeah, I guess that's another example of what's old is new again, because now we're dealing with the same issues we dealt with in the last spring. And one of the messages from Mayor Tory yesterday was that he wanted employers to make the effort to ensure that their employees knew what rights, what supports, what benefits were available to them. And I think that's really important because there is so much confusion out there. And one of the things that we've seen, our firm works with employers and employees. We see both sides. We're now coming up on about 10 months of this. And there is so much confusion about what rights exist. And it's fascinating because on one hand, people overestimate their rights. On the other hand, people underestimate their rights. Both of those are dangerous. It's really important that people understand. So when we're talking about someone who's at home, their kids at home, which right now every kid in the province is home this week and many will be home for many weeks to come. What do you do, as you said, if you can't, let's say, get on that call or do your task? And there's 2 different legal regimes that we're looking at. The human rights legislation provides for accommodation, but that's accommodation of childcare obligations. And that's a higher test. In pre-pandemic days, if someone, for example, said they needed to be accommodated by having a later start time because the daycare only opened at 8:30, they would have to show there were no other options, no other daycares. They didn't have a partner who could take the child to work. There was no other way around it, and it was an absolute need. That's a high threshold. And that's under the human rights legislation. Then we also have the IDEL, the Infectious Disease Emergency Leave, which is designed specifically really for this pandemic. That's a lot broader and a lot easier to access. So if someone cannot work because of COVID, they're entitled to that leave. But remember, that's not accommodation in the sense of not doing some work or working later. That's a leave of absence. It's job protected, so you have job protection, but it's not income protected. So in other words, you're not being paid, although you could apply for EI. But the accommodation is often a lot better because what you want really is you want to be able to work, but maybe just shift your hours or adjust your duties or be given some flexibility to look after your kids. And that's what we're really encouraging our employer clients to provide where it's at all possible.
Indeed, a lot of this can be done through conversations. I know a lot of employees and employers that, how do you even begin these conversations? Is it just a matter of saying, hey, here's what my schedule is going to look like for the next while. It's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. Can we make these accommodations? Is that really just a simple starting point?
It sounds obvious, but it's so true. I mean, a lot of this comes down to communication, and most jobs can be done with some accommodation as long as everyone understands what people are going to do. And I've had a lot of employers who are frustrated because they have employees who say, well, I can do the job, it's fine. And then they find that the person is disappearing for an hour at a time. Or they say they're not going to be working, and yet they're online doing some work. It's got to be really clear what you can do and what you can't do. Make that really clear to your employer, and then employers should, wherever possible, allow for that accommodation. Make sure the work gets done, but it might not be done within the confines of 9 to 5 the way it used to be.
Nothing's the way it used to be, is it, Stuart? All right. And people can find you online. How do they go? Where do they go, I should say?
Lots of ways to find us. We're all over social media. Just search for Rudner Law or go to rudnerlaw.ca, and any of us would be happy to chat with you.
Stuart, appreciate your time. Thank you. I have a feeling it is not the last time we'll be chatting this year.
It's always a pleasure, but take care and stay safe.
Take care. Happy New Year to you, my friend. All right, let's check in with Dina now. What are you talking about, Dee?